Welcome to Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD, the podcast that delves into the diverse and impactful roles scientists can play beyond the lab. With me, David Mendez. Today I have the great pleasure of having with me Dr. Mary Poffenroth. Mary is a scientist, professor, and courage researcher. From being adopted at birth to being a first-generation college student to her first day at NASA and beyond, Mary has dedicated her life to understanding how best to do scary things. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Time, Science, TED, Entrepreneur, and National Geographic. She has 3 master's degrees: biology, psychology, science communication, and a PhD in psychology. In October, she shared to the world her best stories and strongest courage-building, fear-fighting neurohacks in her book Brave New You. So it's fresh off the presses. Welcome, Mary Poffenroth. It's really a pleasure to have you here on Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD.
Thank you so much, David. It's such a pleasure to kind of dive into these topics that for many years and still were taboo.
Organically, historically, almost genetically, fear is a negative experience, which we, as we grow up, tend to set up our life to not deal with. Yet, at each corner, at each turn, there it is. So, in any case, I'm really curious to hear the way the work you've done around this, the way you're connected to courage, and the way, like I said in the beginning, you kind of turn it around to let us see it with different gaze. But maybe let's start with how you got interested in this, and also I'm very curious at people's academic journeys. How did you travel from biology, then psychology, then psychom, and finally PhD in psychology? So I'll let you maybe start with that, and then we can go into your work around fear and courage, and how it can help the community, this community of young researchers who are now possibly, and a lot of them are, considering something that is fear-inducing, which is switching from being in the lab to no longer being in the lab.
Well, I should have been taking notes because I think we have a lot of questions to dig into there. But before I jump into kind of my journey, and a nice segue to introduce Bandit here. So we have a puppy in the studio today. This is Bandit with his little bow tie. But we as humans we don't tell animals that being afraid is shameful. But for humans, we've started to create within our society this idea that having this totally normal animal reaction is dirty or shameful. You should not talk about it. You shouldn't even admit to feeling it, because if you do, you're weak, you're wrong, you're broken. And we don't do that to our dogs. When our dogs are afraid, we try to figure out why they're afraid and try to help. And, we have compassion for our animals when they're afraid. Like I was telling you before we went live, I travel pretty extensively, almost like this year, almost full time. And I take Bandit with me on the road. And, even though he's a road warrior, there's times when it's a new experience. He's in a new airport. This morning, I took a water taxi to get to the location to have our talk today. And that was a new experience for him. And he was kind of shaky, but I reassured him and let him know it's okay. I didn't make him feel bad for it. I didn't punish him for being afraid, because it's a normal reaction. Yet we have removed that normalization for humans. And part of my goal is, let's reverse that, because that's a social construct. That was a decision. And if it was a decision, then we can decide a new pathway forward. And my kind of journey is, like many people, is a long and winding road. And I've been in professional science, really from the start of my career. And I started at NASA in undergrad. So I've been everything from like a traditional lab through, being shot at in the Warner Mountains when I moved into my master's degree because I wanted to study out in the wilds. And Um, then got into traditional academic teaching, which I'm still faculty at San Jose State University. And for me, I always wanted to have some like really good stories at the end of my life. I remember as a grad student, I had really powerful female field biologists that would tell these just amazing adventure stories, kind of like Indiana Jones level stories. And I just remember thinking, like, I want that. I want that for my life. I want to have really good stories. And so how can I balance that with my academic pursuits? I am a lifelong learner. As you said in my bio, I have like 3 master's degrees and a PhD because I just wanted to collect them like Pokemon cards. You gotta collect them all, right? And I saw in traditional academia that many people get really siloed into their niche and they don't talk to anyone else. They only go to the conferences and talk to the people that are already doing what they do. They don't talk to the public. And when we kind of look, and we being like those in the scientific community or academia, when we say really bemoan, oh, I can't believe the public is not better at science, or I can't believe they don't believe the science, and why are we in like an anti-truth phase? Well, when's the last time you talked to the public? When's the last time you had a deeper conversation and took the mastery that you have and made it palatable, enjoyable, fun for other people that are non-scientists to consume? And so that's where the science communication degree, I'd always been interested in media and science communication and had done it for, on my own for years. And I really wanted to continue to hone those skills because it's not just enough to research and study. Like we individually, not just the Chef Corwin or, crocodile hunters of the world, like we all need to be able to communicate our expertise, right? And it's so powerful when you make those connections like you're doing in a more public space, to start having those conversations, to share your passions. And that's when people are going to start to more align with scientific principles and ideas and goals.
Can you share where you did your science communication masters and whether you liked the experience?
Oh, it was amazing. I did it at Imperial College London and lived in London for a few years. It was just an amazing experience. I still go back to London quite often and have a really vibrant community there. Like if I had to pick a town in the whole world that is my personality personified, it's London. Like London is because like all of the museums are free. You just walk in whenever you want to. The libraries are just chef's kiss. And like central London has this culture of lifelong learning for everybody, not just for a few, not just for those that can afford it. Like you just come on in. Now, one could argue it's because they stole their antiquities from other communities, but we won't worry about that part. That's a different conversation. But right now, right? But right now, you can just walk into a museum, even if it's for an hour for your lunch break, and absorb history and art and science. And that, for me, is I think a goal that I would want for every community, to just have access to these things. So they're not behind paywalls. They're not behind the hallowed halls of academia. So it's for everybody. Like science is for everybody, hands down. Like that's, and I want my research to be for everybody. Coming back to the book is full of my stories of many misadventures, from like bad decisions I've made, like running from a bear with my hot pizza, and and everything in between, and but a way to also teach neurohacks. Like it's not a memoir. The neurohacks that will allow you to kind of have a cheat code for the total normal sensations of fear when we're about to get on stage to do a keynote for the first time, when we're going to do our dissertation, right? And you want to do it, but it doesn't mean that your brain is kind of okay with it, because our amygdala, that almond-shaped pair of structures in our brain that is going to in simplicity terms, kind of be that fear center. It just wants you to go back to bed. Just like get in your covers, stay nice and cozy, don't go outside because outside is scary. And so if we're doing something new, like Bandit on the water taxi, that was something new this morning, our amygdala can get fired up. And the neurohacks that I teach in the book, as well as my keynotes and workshops, like professional workshops for companies, is okay, how can we get to that feeling of bravery and courage faster using these things that are easy to access. Generally, the only things I teach are either free or incredibly low cost. Like one of the only things that I recommend as a purchase is kind of like an essential oil, and I could talk about that one, that really strong scents can short circuit that amygdala response. But you can even get like a Vicks Vapo Rub. Like it's something expensive, right? Because I want it to be accessible for everybody as much as possible. Because I think that these things, I wish I got taught these tools as a kid, my life would be a lot different. And, having these conversations, not just with ourselves, but the people that are around us in our like professional communities or our personal communities and families, that's when they're like big change is really going to happen.
You mentioned neurohacks. I really want to talk about them because, of course, people are curious to learn, are always curious to learn things that they can apply in their lives. But I really want to start with fear because I myself lived through it, but I've met a bunch of graduate students who are in fear of what comes after their graduation because they understand maybe that research is not the thing that you want to do. They also maybe understand that only 20%-ish will have a full professorship. And so there's 4 chances in 5 that they will need to do something else. And it's a big unknown, and fear and the unknown are like hand in hand. And so, it was clear to me that it would be interesting to talk with you. But of course, fear today is on the media all the time for different reasons. Climate, politics, war, migration, and there's different. I just listened to a podcast with someone who was an Auschwitz survivor, and some people have deep reflections about fear and about how to deal with it, but it's still, like you said, because it comes organically in given situations and tends to lead us to retire ourselves from a situation that's fear-inducing. It blocks a lot of people from growing, from doing, from sometimes from moving from an impending dramatic situation of some sort, be it physical. Some people freeze when a car is hurtling towards them. Some people jump depending on how your nervous system is wired. Fear is part of both of those. So can you talk a little bit of why you kind of gravitated towards this question of fear? What was your motivation to delve deeply into that taboo, like you said, question and try to understand it more deeply?
I'm definitely going to get to that part, but before I forget, I want to kind of answer a few of the points that you made initially around kind of like fear of the unknown and why are people afraid of what's going to happen after their PhD. So we take a look at fear, if we have all that, like, let me back it up a little bit. So when we think about fears, we have kind of the separation of a kind of like a fictional fear or a factual fear. Right? So a factual fear is something that is a shared reality. Let's say we'll use the car backfiring kind of idea that you were talking about, where we hear this like loud popping and then we're going to stop and like either like flinch or freeze, right? And as our brain's trying to figure out, okay, do I need to react to that? Is that a car or is that a gunshot? Like, is that something I need to do? What do you think about? But that's if we're walking, down the street, let's say in central London, and then we all hear it, we all experience it, and then if it's nothing that is dangerous, then we move on with our day, right? Factual fear is for humans right now something that my work is. It doesn't necessarily, the neurohacks won't help with that, but it's not as insidious as fictional fear for our society today. And fictional fears, just like any good story, it's going to have a kernel of truth in there or a kernel of experience. But fictional fears are going to be the things that we fear, that we think about in the past, or that we are thinking about in the future, right? That we have told ourselves a story, or we have been told a story either by our families, our society, media, and we hold on to those stories and we tell ourselves that story over and over and over again. That's really where the neurohacks can help the most, is helping to move through that, right? So if you go back to the public speaking idea of like doing a keynote, and you're in the wings and you're possibly telling yourself, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared enough. I'm an imposter. Like, everyone's going to hate me. They're going to throw vegetables, even though no one brings vegetables anymore to like a talk. But I definitely know they brought it today. You're just going through like this huge play of things that could possibly happen that are really probably not going to happen. But we'll get that fear spiral, and we'll just continue to ratchet ourselves up. That's where these neurohacks can really help. And part of that, when we take a look at the breadth of the many things that we can be afraid of as humans that fall into that fictional, right? They're not happening in the moment. It's not a shared reality. Many people will call these worries, right? Or stresses, or I'm so stressed about fill in the blank. But those can kind of be roughly categorized into either fear of not enough or fear of losing control. And to come back to this idea of those that are about to graduate, or getting other postdocs, or are in the market and deciding where to go, it's kind of both of those things. They have in grad school, you have control. Okay, I'm going to choose mostly who I want to work with in a lab before I apply. If I'm in a class structure, I'm going to choose which classes that I want to do. So I have that sense of control, and when you no longer have that kind of framework of university, and you have either too many options or not enough options, and you know that you're going into a new space, that fear of not enough can definitely kick in as well. But for me, like, my recommendation would be, for my career, I've always tried to think of it as a founder or an entrepreneur, right? Taking a look not just as, oh, okay, well, I'm faculty and I'm just going to do the faculty thing. Like, all faculty have done faculty things since the dawn of time. I'm going to look at it as, if I was building a company, if I was my own CEO of a scrappy startup, I need to know, okay, what is the market doing? Where is it going? Whatever that market is. What is being done that's working? What's new? What do people care about? Where's the most need or gaps in the market? When we do our literature reviews, we look for gaps in the research, right? But then we kind of stop looking at gaps in the greater market, right? And especially as we think about, okay, AI is coming for everyone's jobs. So how can you make yourself constantly relevant in a rapidly changing every environment? It's not just academia, it's everything. Everything is going to change. And so you have to be okay with change, and that's a practice, right? But thinking about it instead of, okay, how do I get that one job and hope that one job is going to be my forever home, of looking at it as, okay, what can I learn if I get this position? But if I don't get this position, can I make my own position? Can I craft a life that has the things that are important to me, right? For me, traveling is important to me. I want to have freedom. Freedom is huge for me. I need to be able to have control over my schedule, because I want to work on the projects and do cool stuff like talk to you today when I want to do it. And so I crafted my life to be able to fulfill those things as goals. So my recommendation is like, okay, well, what do you really want of not just your post PhD life, but like, what do you want to do in rough sketches for the next 10 years? And it doesn't have to be, oh, I want to be a tenured professor per se, but like, but why? Like, what sparks your soul about being a tenured professor, right? Like, does it because of the power? Is it the prestige? Is it the access to research resources? And if it's like, oh, I just want to research, well, have to research in academic institution, right? So kind of, but it comes back to that foundation of really asking yourself, what's going to make me happy? Because you're going to be working for a lot of hours, you might as well enjoy it.
Hi there. If you have questions and doubts about your professional future as a young scientist, as a PhD, you can now talk directly to me by joining the Beyond the Thesis community on school.com. If you go to skool.com/papaphd, you will find a safe space and a community of people like you figuring out their postgraduate school career journey. And you will have ample opportunity to talk with me directly and ask me your questions on live coffee time sessions and on weekly Q&As. Additionally, you will find courses and also have the opportunity of having one-on-one calls with me. So remember, skool.com/papaphd. See you soon. One thing that happens, I feel, and especially if you come from and you've done 3 masters and a PhD, is you get used to being evaluated. You get there's someone out there that's the judge and jury, and that could eventually say, well, you did all of this, but it's not enough. But you're not good enough, and that's on the side of on the scarcity side that you mentioned. I guess maybe now is the time to neurohack our way out of this, because a lot of people are feeling this. Some people are even stopping that they say that they have a PhD because they feel that it's now become some sort of kind of obstacle to getting what they want, because they're being told, oh, you're overqualified or you're too specialized, etc., etc. So first, how was your experience around this? Because you've decided to move or to lead your academic path really far, but around you, did you see people dealing with these fears and facing the future with this sense of smallness and not being adapted for what comes after?
Like, we all feel it. I mean, like, hi, I would like to say that I have felt those things and I will continue to feel those things. I think that for me, and what I recommend, it's just practice, right? When you start out with something new, and it's like, rejection is really hard. And that's not just a grade upon your person. Rejection, when we think about the evolutionary aspects of it, rejection could mean you actually died. Like, you were rejected from the community and you couldn't get access to resources or protection that a human community provided, you die. And so even though now we can live, as long as we have access to money, we can pay somebody to get us food. We can pay someone to provide electricity and safety and all these things. But that's not where our brain evolved. As you know, evolution's really slow. And so we have a lot of these, leftover experiences and mechanisms for survival that are rooted in these things that maybe aren't necessarily current now, but our brains are not going to evolve that quickly. So when we get rejected, our again, coming back to a little bit of the science, that amygdala is going to fire up, because the amygdala is very binary. It's like kind of like on off, right? We can experience fear on a spectrum in terms of intensity, but the amygdala is kind of like, it's turned on and we're afraid, or it's turned off and we're not. And so especially in the early journey of feeling like getting rejected, not just feeling it, like you literally say get rejected, and hi, welcome to internet comments, right? So you want to practice with rejection, just get into media, but continuing to find ways that you can practice with being rejected or putting yourself out there. It does get easier. But still, I mean, I've been doing media for like 17 years, and it's still hard for me to look at any comments, because I'm like, they're gonna hate me again. I'm not reading the Amazon comments. I'm like, those are terrifying. It's just, and it's okay to say that stuff is scary. Right? We just need better tools to move through those sensations so that we can continue to put ourselves out there, and that that first rejection doesn't tank our soul in terms of like not wanting to ever play, again. We just like, oh, I lost once, forget it. I'm not going to do it because that felt horrible. Just know it does feel horrible. It's part of it, right? But it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. It doesn't mean that you're not brilliant or talented or, shouldn't have everything that you want. It just means that you have to keep knocking on the doors until there's not just one that opens, but that is a good fit for you. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay, right? The old like saying, I would rather be someone's shot of whiskey than everyone's cup of tea. It's, that's fine. And they're not like, there's so much diversity in humans and what we like, how we work with others, things that fire us up and make us passionate about something like a project, that there is a niche out there, right? It's just not always easy, especially in the beginning, to find that niche. But, one last kind of like tidbit of advice for new graduates would be, especially as we get more digitized, more technology forward in these things, you have to go out and meet real humans. Every opportunity I've ever gotten is because I networked, met humans, and I come from a trash panda background, so I was not born into a family that had connections. I'm, like you said in my bio, I'm the first person in my entire family to go to college. 1 out of 5 kids. I was the only one to graduate high school. So I didn't go into my professional career with money, prestige, connections. So I had to make them, right? And maybe the scariest thing is going cold into a room where you don't know anybody to network and putting your hand out and being like, hi, can you be my friend? Right? But these neurohacks are going to help with those kind of things too, because even though it feels scary, it's not going to kill you, right? It's not going to kill you to say hi to somebody at a conference. And just pushing through that discomfort is part of the thing. And if you want those opportunities, they're going to come person to person. Just relying on trying to apply for things online and never actually talking to people, it's just not anymore. Like maybe in the start of the internet, but not anymore.
Yeah, sure. No, I totally. I was just trying to kind of sum up what I got from what you said, but really quickly. So maybe stop using the word rejection. You didn't say that, but I'm thinking, because if you think about it as a muscle that you're training, I don't know, I'm thinking of a way of reframing it in a metaphor or an image that people can say, okay, I'm going to do this scary thing and not take it personally, and actually say, whichever outcome, I'm going to be growing this muscle. I don't know if you heard this podcast, Diary of a CEO, and now I don't know the name of the guy, and he was saying that he started selling, I think, Windows when he was 16 years old, and he said each no, and it's his personality, but each no was exciting because I felt I was getting closer to my next yes. And anyway, I think that kind of sums up for me what you're trying to impart there.
Reframing is really powerful, and you can think about it like kind of like a video game, right? The first time you play a video game, you're not going to master it. And if you did, you'd be bored, right? The first round, you're like, oh, just beat the big boss. Okay, done. You'd be really mad that you spent $75 on a game that you could master in 2 minutes. You're like, you don't want it to be, like the idea of flow, which is, not my idea, but there's lots of like research around it, that we're most engaged and happy when things are not so difficult that we can't feel like we have movement or direction, but not so easy that right out the gate we're perfect at it, because then it's boring, right? We have to have that little bit of a challenge. So you can think of it as kind of like a video game, right? Okay, I'm just I'm in this level. I need to figure out the game mechanics. I need to figure out, okay, what are these coins going to do for me? Oh, that thing just killed me. Oops. Oh, well, okay, retry, play again. Now I know not to eat that mushroom. Got it. All right. Now I'm going to jump over and see what's in here. Ooh, coins. Oh, I can get stuff. So, right, like just kind of gamifying things and making generally unfun things more fun is gamification at its core, which is something that I try to do in my work as well, which is a good segue to, so in the book, there's lots of neurohacks that I have in the written word, obviously. But I am creating a card deck, which is in progress because these cards take a long time to do the artwork and stuff like that. But all these digital cards are available free for your audience. If you just go to hellobravenewYou.com, there is tons of digital downloads that no sign in, no sign up, totally free, including these cards that are some of the neurohacks that we talk about today, and they're interactive on the website. And I'll just do the interactivity for you here. Oh my God, I love cards. I love cards. Yeah, I love cards. And these are kind of like really quick, easy win things that that we can do in the moment. One of my favorites that I do all the time is going to the pinch the valley one. And this is going to be able to tap into our vagus nerve to help activate the vagus nerve to help calm the nervous system, right? Because when we're going into those scary situations like networking in a room full of people that we do not know, this is something that anyone can do, and you have it on you, no fancy anythings. So for me, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to show it with right, but you can alternate, doesn't matter. But for me, taking my right hand and kind of making an L with it. And then on the other side of my left, I'm just kind of like pinching, on camera there. That's glad I did my nails. So kind of in the meaty part, like, yeah. So like not the webbing. It's like not the webbing part, but kind of this like where so like where it's called like pinching the valley. So if this was like a V, then that kind of mirrored, there we go, kind of like this part here. So just kind of like, and massaging it, right? Like do like a little circular motion. And this for me is like something that I instantly feel. Right? I'm just like, it's a good spa day. And then you can switch it up. There's no time limit, right? You don't want to dig in there and give yourself a bruise, a little bit like medium pressure, kind of a circular motion, and you can switch hands. No one knows you're doing it, right? You're just kind of like not doing like, for me, this brings a lot of relaxation. And because I love gamifying things, in the book there are many, many different neurohacks, none of which will hurt you. Nothing's asking you to consume anything into your body. So just play around with them, right? See what works for your body. For me, Pinch the Valley works great, but it may not work for everybody. And so there's not just one. There's a lot. They're free. See what works for you, and that's, I think, the experimentation part. That we experiment in the lab, we experiment in the field, but are we really experimenting in our lives when building our toolbox of tools that are going to make us successful? And going into it like you would play a game, right? Like play a video game or a tabletop game. Just try it. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't need to be perfect. And if you if you lose, it doesn't feel great, but still, it's just a game, right? And then next time you'll get better, and the next time you'll get better, and you'll figure stuff out. And thinking about it and reframing it in that way can help take some of the stress out of a particular situation. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Let me ask you one question. So first, you just give an URL that I could share right away with people, which was
hellobravenewYou.com. And that will, it'll do like a redirect, just because to verbalize the spelling of my name is not the funnest thing in my whole life. So I try to make things a little bit easier.
hellobravenewYou.com. But so my question to you, so you hear about the vagus nerve very often. Where is it in the body? Why is it so central to these things? What does it do?
So it's going to be the longest cranial nerve in our body. And when it's activated, it is going to calm down our fight or flight response, right? So like many things in our body that work in kind of opposition of one another, it's going one of its like purposes is going to, in addition to just being a nerve, right? Nerves are going to transmit signals throughout the body so that we can do many different things. And just like we have, let's say, the bicep and the tricep work in opposition of one another. When, our bicep is going to contract, our tricep is going to relax. And when our tricep, contracts, then the bicep is going to relax. And they just work in opposition of one another. Same is true with, like when we activate that cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, it's going to help to calm down our sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight. And, to bring it back to also the structures of our brain, the amygdala, like we said, the fear center, also works in opposition of our prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex, if you slapped your head ever so gently on your forehead, our prefrontal cortex would be, like kind of behind there. And the prefrontal cortex is important because it's responsible for our ability to plan, our creativity, our innovation, our problem solving. But because the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala work in opposition of one another, when our amygdala turns on, when it's fired up, our prefrontal cortex kind of takes a little nap, kind of goes offline. And that's why we can't solve problems or come up with good ideas when we are in a fear arousal state. We feel overwhelmed because you're like, why can't I come up with good ideas? Like, my brain's not working. And it's not your fault, because if you are in that fear arousal state, or what many people just call stressed, right? We just use this kind of collect all term called stress, when it's really many times a fear arousal response. And you will feel like you can't solve complex problems because you can't. It's not your fault. It's just your brain. That's how your brain works. And evolution, people ask, like, well, why is this, that, and the other, especially my students. I'm like, well, there's many times there's not a driver behind evolution that we can say, oh, this is why. It's just, it is. That's just how it evolved. And my whole goal is, how do we optimize our human experience, not fix what's broken? Right? Because our brain's not broken. It's just we need to understand how to work with it better, and have tools in our back pocket that, again, playing around with those tools before you're in a really high stress situation is key. Because if you wait until things are at like a 10, because again, then, even though the amygdala is binary of on and off, our intensity is going to be on a spectrum. And, having that knowledge, taking away the shame of feeling afraid. I mean, if people got anything from this session, is everyone is afraid of feeling afraid, right? Because we're so afraid of the shame and the rejection that we perceive will happen if we tell anyone that something is making us nervous, or that we're afraid of a new opportunity. And we don't have to be. That's just how our brain works. We don't shame people for having to breathe, because you have to. That means if you're breathing, that means you're alive. That's just part of the human experience. It's just how we're made. But we shame people for certain emotions. So let's change that.
Is this technique and calming the vagus nerve a way to get our body to get rid of those like physical expressions of fear? And if so, once we've done that, what's the next step to then start kind of being conscious of it being there, and actually a little bit, how you mentioned, when our animals are afraid, we try to understand why. Is there a badger around, or we take it as information to a potential danger out there, but we don't do it for ourselves. How do you, once you calm your body, what's the next step to then be able to, although a second ago both your feet were like kind of frozen to the ground, you can now start taking steps informed by that fear? Is it something that you can share a little bit about?
Yeah, well, that is a perfect segue, David, to my RAIN method, and I'm showing you the infographic that is also available for digital download on the website. Again, free, no sign in, no sign up, just free for all. And so the RAIN method is part of that, and I can go over kind of like the steps. And if people are maybe listening to this while driving, don't feel overwhelmed, because this is all going to also be in a tutorial video that is on the website. And like I said, I want this to be accessible. I want this to start to change lives, and hopefully it does. So I think going through the RAIN method will be really powerful. And if you wanted to, if like I'm a visual person, if you could take a look, and there's the infographic. These are like I brought my physical ones, because these are things that I use when I do like live events and keynotes and workshops. I'll have the physical ones, but you can take a look at the digital one. So kind of starting, when we think about, we talked about fictional and fictional and factual fears that, and you talked about, okay, everyone kind of feels something different, the sensations in their body. So this first step is just really going to be recognize. So RAIN is going to be for recognize, assign, identify, and navigate. Yeah, so just kind of 4 steps. With these 4 steps, many people feel better in just like 1 or 2 steps, and you don't have to do all 4. But if all 4 help, then keep going until you feel more in control or feel better. And this is going to be something, like the quick win neurohacks, like we did, like the pinch the valley. That's something that you probably don't have time to go through these steps, but if you practice the RAIN method, it'll kind of become quicker and more natural for you to do. So that recognize, on the infographic, there's only a few because that's all that would fit. But your tells, kind of like a poker tell, is going to be kind of like different, right? Everyone is a little bit different. For me, I'm a shoulder scruncher, like my shoulders, like in my ears, I'm a shoulder scruncher. I'm also like a jaw clencher. So I know if I'm doing either of those things or both, okay, it's my body trying to tell me something. Now, since this is going to be more of an academic, many people listening to academic circles, I will give the caveat that it's easiest to explain these principles and most efficient to like anthropomorphize, because the purists out there will be like, you are your body, you can't say it's separate. So I just want to say, I know I'm anthropomorphizing and it's going to be okay. Right? So it's going to be fine. Right? Good. Good. So like that first, like, thinking about, okay, what are your tells? What is the things that your body does specifically? Because not everyone is going to have every type of what we would call like stress reactions, right? So if you think back just on either a recent stressful experience or some big stressful experience, like you were talking about before you gave a keynote for the first time, what would be your tells, David?
Yeah, like chest, or in between my chest and my stomach, and dryness of the mouth would be the both of them.
Yeah. So what you can do with that, so now you have more data, right? Now you have more information. So going forward, if something's really scary, you don't need to wear those tells because you know what's happening. But it's those like nuances of experience, right? Being like, okay, if I know that I am having some tightness in my chest and dry mouth, that I'm going to get curious about what is causing this, like where is this coming from. And now sometimes that curiosity is easy. You're like, I'm about to go on stage for the first time. Of course I know what it is, but at least you're having a fear arousal response, and then you can move on to the second step, which is assign. So there's many parts in the RAIN method that are taking advantage of the power of pigeonholing. And for humans, we love to organize and categorize because it makes us feel safe, right? It lets us put control over a chaotic world, and it's like a nice little warm blankie, right? When we can categorize things. And so even just the act of pigeonholing will help to calm the amygdala. So steps 2 is assign. This is also the fear wheel made originally from, Project made in like the 30, 40 years ago, created something similar, but for all of the emotions. This one's just going to be focused on only fear. And in the assign step, you want to pick exactly one word that you could associate with the feeling that you're having in that moment. And people sometimes will argue with me, like, well, I had like 3 though. I'm like, nope, just one. You only get one, because the process is the point, right? So you only get one. And then you choose exactly one word that is going to best describe what you're feeling. So is that, dread? Is it, that you feel insignificant, right? That imposter syndrome. So just choose one word in that moment and say, okay, I know that I'm having a fear arousal response right now. I'm going to choose one word, choose my word, maybe dread. Okay, I got it. And now that I have that thing and I've thought about, okay, I'm about to go on stage for my first keynote. I'm dreading it because I don't know what's going to happen, right? And that can bring us to the step 3, which is identify. I talked a little bit about how our fictional fears can be grossly categorized into one of these two buckets. So either fear of not enough or fear of losing control. And sometimes, there's really big complex fears that are a little bit of both. But for the RAIN method, you want to choose just one. Because again, it's the act of pigeonholing. Like, okay, we want to have things categorized because the categorization and identification helps bring that sense of control back, helps get that prefrontal cortex back online that's all about control and logic, and helps to calm down the emotion-driven amygdala. So if you know, okay, my trigger is going to be about to go on stage for this keynote, and asking yourself these things, right? Is this because I'm afraid of not being enough, or is it that I'm afraid of losing control? And there is no right answer, right? If it was me for this situation, I would choose fear of not being enough, but you might choose fear of losing control, right? And we're both right. We're both right because it's personal and it's about trying to bring logic to an escalating emotional experience. It's not about having a perfect answer. But you only get to get one, right? Just like in step 2, people are like, no, but I have both of them. I'm like, because you're complex people, I get it. But in this step, you only get one. And then, right? Yeah, yes, exactly, right? Because when you're having a big emotion, you don't need to make things more complex, which is why my neurohacks are really simple, right? Because you're, again, like we said, the prefrontal cortex is offline and it's not going to get any better if we try to force it back. I'm like, then we're just going to get more, fired up and have an even stronger fear arousal response. And so, simple, just categorize. Again, it's the process. This is the point of pigeonholing, bringing that sense of confidence and calm back to your person. And the last stage is going to be navigate, right? And this is where the neurohacks come in. On the RAIN method infographic, I talk about box breathing, but there's many different, they're kind of interchangeable for that last step. So, you could use pinch the belly, you could use, many different neurohacks that are in the book or other things that are powerful for you. And that's just kind of, okay, now let's put something into play that the RAIN method both, relies on the psychology part of it, but also the biology part of it. And so that we can really have a framework to tap into those two things to get back to that sense of calm and us to have the courage to continue to move forward.
I feel that, thinking about the audience of Beyond the Thesis, we with this profile might tend to try to do it all in our head, in our mind. And I want to mention it. I loved your video game metaphor is that, if you buy a good video game, you don't expect to win at the first time. And if you go into, let's say, job interviews or whichever new thing that's inducing fear in you, and are saying right away, well, this is the first time, so I'm probably not going to make it. Let's learn the most out of it. It's really a great way to bring down this stress, anxiety, and fear. Just wanted to mention that because it's another really great element of the video game.
And gamify it, right? Yeah, I mean, like, because a game is just a combination of challenges and rewards. That's all. That's all a game is. And think about, okay, so how can you structure it? How can you make your own game? We'll use the example of interviews. That the challenge is, after 10 interviews, here's your reward, or 10 cold LinkedIn reach outs, and then you get a reward, or how fast can you do this, or what ways can you trick your mind into enjoying the process instead of just having the drudgery of it.
I have another question about the neurohacks. So there's a collection of them. It's a deck of cards. So I imagine that there's a bunch of them, which must mean that there's different neurohacks will work for different people. Because I've heard some people say, oh, before I give a talk, I do this many push-ups and or jumping jacks, and that's what breaks my fear of the stage. But other people say, oh, I do some breathing exercises.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's going to be different, right? And every situation is going to be a little bit different. So maybe one technique works really well for kind of like a low level fear response, and another technique for you works best at like a high level fear response. But the only way you're going to be able to know is to experiment, to play around with these things, right? Not waiting until you have a really high risk, stressful situation to try these out, because then you don't know what is going to work the best. And even like creating a rating system, right? So one of my ideas with doing kind of the cards is, once I have, like, I think we're at 10 right now, but once I have them, like a full deck, is, let's say each day you pull out one card at random, and then try that one as something like really low risk of. There's always something that you can find in the day that will cause you some kind of stress, right? Right, yeah, exactly. And see if it works, see if it does anything for you. And if it doesn't, you put it in the pile that's like, not for me. And then when you find one, you're like, I can't believe that really worked. It worked so well. Okay, that is going to be one that is a winner for you and your body. And like one thing for me that I do, coming back to like kind of the strong sense one, so anything like peppermint, eucalyptus, tea tree, that are really pungent scents. What I personally do before I go on stage for a keynote is, because they're clear oils, right? And I have one like a little roller ball. I literally will just like roll the oil underneath my nostrils. You can't see it, especially from stage, but I can breathe in this really powerful scent, and that helps to calm me down before I get on stage. I think it works. It works for me, but maybe not for other people, especially if they find those scents so offensive it's distracting, right? And so, because you want to be a little distracted by it, but if you're like, and making this face on stage, that's not going to be for you, right? But I wouldn't, I would try it maybe before you go to, on the TED stage to make sure it's going to work for you, and just like play around with these things. Again, nothing that I teach is gonna hurt you. I mean, unless like if you did pinch the valley and really like dug in there and gave yourself a bruise, just don't do that. But right, they're all things that are safe, that you're meant to play around with. And when we change how we see our own fear, when we change how we talk about our fear and others' fear, then we start to defame it, right? We take out some of the scary vampire in the dark energy from it. And, we're super, especially as Americans, we're very comfortable talking about productivity all the time, right? Here's a productivity hack. Ooh, this is how you can get more productivity out of your day. We're totally fine with that conversation. So let's make the conversation around fear and courage, which if you don't handle your fear business, you will not be able to innovate. Why don't we make that less taboo and less scary in and of itself, and make it just more of a natural conversation? Like, hey, I found this other new neurohack, maybe not from me, somewhere else. Or, hey, I tried this thing and it worked so well. I tried skunk oil instead of peppermint and it worked really well for me. Whatever. Tiger balm, right? Like Tiger balm really just did the trick for me. But, right, just play around with it, knowing that these things are not going to hurt you. And if they work, great. If they don't work, that's okay too. Just keep going.
People who are out there on stages that you who are listening admire are always saying in interviews that they always have stage fright. It's not something that disappears. You don't cut it off of your life. And I feel from what you're saying that it's part of who we are as humans. It has its use in our survival, like you said, not because of saber-toothed lions out there, but so I'm gonna stop, because I don't want to. I often layer questions or ideas. First thing, because we're really getting to the end of the interview. If people want to reach out to you, if people want to share their neurohacks with you, because I'm sure you're interested of learning them, what's the best way to reach out to you, to get in contact with you, and to maybe say thank you for what you shared in today's conversation?
That'd be fantastic. Well, you can connect. I'm on all social platforms by my name at Mary Poffenroth. And you can also, reach out via email, mary@teampoffenroth.com.
Oh, I like that. It's a good teampoffenroth.com. Awesome. Good. So do reach out. As you've seen, if you've been here, if you've been watching so far or listening, Mary is very approachable, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer your questions and to get in contact with you. Now, before talking with you, I may have told someone who'd asked me that fear is in one continent, there's an ocean between them, and courage is another continent. And here am I now after this conversation thinking that they're like almost if you do this work, they're hand in hand, and fear is kind of what is fueling your courage. But fear controlled, fear neurohacked is what is fueling your courage. And what I want to ask you is, if you're able to, just now in a minute, give a description of good fear, or of what fear, this fear that's with us physiologically, if we have the optimal relation with it, how would you describe it? How can it help us? What sort of persona is it in our life, instead of that, ghoul or vampire that you said that often we think it is?
Coming back to this idea of the fear being good before we go on stage, because we care, right? We want to do a good job. We are just like every speaker has that like nervous energy, even if they've done 1,000 talks, because it tells them that they still care, and it tells them they want to be engaged. If they're bored, they're not going to do a good delivery, right? But now on the other side, if they're too terrified, they're not going to do a good show. And so finding that balance, having those tools so you don't get into the zone of too much and you can't speak or have good ideas, but not being so unaffected that you can't connect to your audience, right? Because everything's about balance. And last but not least, I'll share a metaphor that really stuck with me. It's not mine. It's Elizabeth Gilbert's, how the relationship between fear and courage, that fear and courage would be kind of like two people on a road trip together, right? Only one person can drive the car. And it's the, courage, living with courage, being courageous, being brave is not an absence of fear. It is learning how to play nicely with it, right? So you don't want fear in the driver's seat, just do whatever it wants, turning on all the crappy music and swerving and, drinking a beer. Like you don't want fear in the driver's seat, but you can't get rid of fear out of the car, right? Or if like siblings on a road trip, you don't want to get like, it's gonna be in the car whether you like it or not, but not in the driver's seat. So you tell fear to get out of the driver's seat. Courage is going to be in the driver's seat, and you know that it's there, but you have ways to make sure that you're remaining in control.
Mary, I think this is a great way to end this conversation. I think leaving people with this metaphor is a great way for this to be memorable, because I think it encapsulates all that we've said and all that you've shared based on all your work. And I really hope that people are going to go try the neurohacks. Also, get your book, of course. But I hope you also get a lot of feedback throughout throughout your promotion, because I think this is really important. I think the fact that, like you said, all of these tools that you're sharing with people, there's nothing you need to buy, there's nothing you need to drink or take or whatever. It's all with tools that you have with you all the time, and I think that's really, really today very valuable, I'd say. So yeah, I'm really, really thankful for the community and humans in general, that you're doing this work, and that you're kind of championing this normalization and this tabooification of fear. Wow.
I like it.
Yeah. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I know that this is going to serve a lot of people. There's been a lot of people with us live. I've seen at least like 23, 24 people throughout our conversation here. I think on LinkedIn, but maybe also on YouTube. Thank you, Mary Poffenroth, for having spent this well over an hour with me. Thank you for your time. It's been great.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you for listening to episode 21 of this 6th season of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD, with me, David Mendez, and my guest, Mary Poffenroth. If you have questions or comments about what we discussed in this episode, you can now bring them directly to me in the brand new Papa PhD community on School.com. Simply go to skool.com/papaphd in one word and discover the course material, the weekly live sessions, and all that I share with a community of people like you trying to figure out their professional future after the PhD. See you there.